Queens of Europe. Catherine the Great of Russia. Part 1. Thank you to ExpressVPN for sponsoring this video. Catherine the Great, Tsarina of Russia, clawed her way from child bride to mighty monarch by having her husband deposed and murdered. She lived her life her own way, taking lovers as she pleased and dragging Russia kicking and screaming into the modern era. Catherine was born Princess Sophie Augusta Frederica on May 2, 1729, in Stettin, Pomerania, in the Kingdom of Prussia, in what is now Poland. Her father, Prince Christian August, was a general and younger brother of the childless prince who ruled the modest region of Anhalt-Zerbst. Her mother, Joanna Elizabeth of Holstein-Gottorp, was the seventh of 10 children of a much more illustrious Prussian family. Her elder siblings went on to prestigious positions and marriages. One of her brothers became King of Sweden. However, Joanna was pawned off in marriage at just 15 to Christian August, 22 years her senior. After her upbringing in the glittering court of Brunswick, Joanna found married life to a middle-aged man in a small and somber town to be a great downfall. She was deeply disappointed by the birth of her first child, Sophie. The labor was difficult, nearly killing her, and left her bedridden for months. If she had given birth to a son, her position in the family would have improved significantly, but she felt a mere daughter was hardly worth the agony. Joanna showed a strong preference for her sons and made it clear to young Sophie what a disappointment she was. Despite the lack of maternal love, the princess showed intelligence and confidence beyond her years. When presented to the future King Frederick the Great at the age of 4, she was told to kiss his hand, and she instead demanded that he bow down to her so that she could reach. Frederick was so tickled by this event that he never forgot the impressive child. As she grew, Sophie received her education from a French governess, as was the fashion at the time. She was groomed for what was considered her ultimate possible ambition, to be a wife and improve the position of her family through a good match. And she bagged a husband who far exceeded her impoverished family's ambitions. Her mother received a letter from the Tsarina of Russia, inviting her and her eldest daughter to the imperial court for a visit. Tsarina Elizabeth desired to make a marriage alliance for her heir, Peter, with Prussia at the cost of the Austrian Empire. And King Frederick of Prussia, having no children of his own, promoted his subject Sophie, who had so impressed him as a child. Sophie first met her future husband Peter when they were 10 and 11. She found him detestable. She disliked his pale complexion, his fondness for alcohol at such a young age, and that he still played with toy soldiers. But personal distaste is a mere bump on the track in the path of the freight train of 18th century political marriage. Sophie was moved to Russia at 15. She determined that despite her personal feelings, she would do whatever was necessary to ingratiate herself to the Tsarina, her new fiancé, and the Russian people, in order to be qualified to wear the crown. In preparation for her marriage, Princess Sophie was baptized into the Russian Orthodox Church and given the Russian name Yekaterina Alexeyevna, commonly anglicized to Catherine. She learned the Russian language with great zeal and would often stay up all night pacing her bedroom and repeating her lessons. As a result, she could speak perfect Russian with a slight accent, and also fell ill with pneumonia and nearly died. In her delirium, her mother asked her if she wanted a priest, to which Catherine replied, "I don't want any Lutheran, I want my Orthodox father." This act of loyalty to her new religion deeply impressed Tsarina Elizabeth. Catherine credited her miraculous recovery to bloodletting, on one occasion being drained 4 times in a single day. After a year of grooming, Catherine and Peter were wed on August 21, 1745. The couple did not get on well. Peter had also been brought up in Prussia until his childless aunt, Tsarina Elizabeth, had called him to Russia to be her heir. Unlike Catherine, who embraced her new homeland, Peter hated the country he was destined to rule and pretty much despised everything and everyone else, including Catherine, whom he abused physically, verbally, and psychologically. He lacked intelligence and maturity and still enjoyed staging battles with his toy soldiers. On one occasion, Catherine found a rat hanging from a makeshift gallows in their bedroom. Her husband explained that the rodent had committed treason and would hang there for 3 days as an example. It's easy to cast Peter as an inept villain in Catherine's story, but it is important to note that he was a deeply disturbed young man, having suffered years of abuse at the hands of his own tutor and guardian. While Peter grew to be detested by the court, Catherine grew more and more loved by contrast. Though no great beauty, she was witty and charming, always ready with the perfect quip or compliment for any situation. She treated her servants as kindly as her equals. Peter would often demand servants perform military drills for his amusement all day, and the same men would spend their evenings singing and joking with Catherine. After 8 long years together, Catherine and Peter had never consummated their unhappy marriage. Historians argue whether this was due to impotence on Peter's part or the couple's complete lack of attraction to one another. Either way, Catherine received a stern letter from Tsarina Elizabeth, reminding her that it was her duty to produce an heir, and hinting that she needed to get pregnant as soon as possible by any means necessary. So at 24, Catherine began an affair with tall, dark, and handsome army officer Sergei Saltykov. Sadly, Catherine suffered several miscarriages before finally giving birth to her son, Paul, in an arduous labor. As soon as the new heir was born, Tsarina Elizabeth took him away from his mother to raise him herself. Catherine was left alone and ignored, bedridden for weeks, while Elizabeth and Peter celebrated the birth. Catherine was heartbroken, but she was made of strong stuff. She made good use of her convalescence, expanding her mind by consuming French Enlightenment philosophy. She began a correspondence with Voltaire, and though the two never met, they continued a close friendship via letter for the rest of his life. She then moved on to ancient Roman philosopher Tacitus, who influenced her greatly with his understanding of power politics and his argument that you should never trust a person's professed motivations, but instead look for their hidden self-interest. When she was well enough to return to court, she came back as a powerful force. She crashed her husband's birthday party and, wearing the finest regalia, snubbed everyone who had ignored her or who tried to get in her way. She had bent over backwards to be a good and obedient wife and daughter-in-law, and that had gotten her nothing but misery. So she carved a new position for herself at court and built up a network of allies, informants, and spies. She also took several strategic lovers, including Stanislaw Poniatowski, who likely fathered her second child, Anna. While Catherine was in labor, her husband Peter, who was well aware the child wasn't his, sat by her bed and, drunk out of his mind, taunted and threatened Catherine, saying he could do anything he wanted to her. Baby Anna was once again snatched away by Tsarina Elizabeth, and though Catherine rarely saw her, she was devastated when the baby died at just 15 months old. At the funeral, Peter told Catherine that her daughter was in hell. In 1762, Tsarina Elizabeth died, and Peter and Catherine were crowned Tsar and Tsarina of Russia. The new Tsar spent his coronation openly celebrating his aunt's death. He still hated Russia and loved Prussia, and presently the two nations were fighting against each other in the 7 Years' War. Russia was on the brink of victory, but the new Tsar handed his idol, Frederick the Great, a generous peace treaty and gave back much of the land Russian soldiers had died to win. To add insult to injury, the Tsar wore a Prussian military uniform and changed the color of the Russian army's coats from green to Prussian blue. Peter took every opportunity to humiliate his wife as well, dragging her out in public and trying to force her to confess that their son was illegitimate. Peter's reign of terror and madness steeled Catherine's resolve that she would never be safe unless she got rid of her husband. Catherine's new lover, Grigory Orlov, was everything her husband was not. A popular war hero, he and his brother Alexei represented a strong faction at court. Catherine gave birth to a son, Alexei, who was most likely fathered by Orlov. 6 months into Peter's reign, Catherine and the Orloff brothers hatched a plot to overthrow him. Catherine rode out in a green army uniform and met with troops who were loyal to her. There, members of the clergy ordained her as the one true occupant of the Russian throne. She gathered support from the military and the public who hated the Tsar, and before long all of Moscow was behind her. She rode to the palace at the head of the army and had her husband arrested. He fell on his knees at her mercy and signed his abdication. He was delighted at the prospect of leaving Russia and returning to his beloved Prussia. But Catherine had no intention of handing him over to her enemy, where he might gain support to rise against her. She had him placed under house arrest. 8 days later, he was dead. Officially due to a bout of hemorrhoids, but more likely he was strangled by order of his wife's lover, Orloff. In Part 2, we'll see Catherine blossom out from under the shadow of her malignant husband. We'll learn how well she stuck with her Enlightenment ideals once ensconced on the throne, and about her infamous reputation as a prolific lover. Catherine the Great had to be tough and outsmart her enemies to protect herself back in the 18th century. And the best way to outsmart 21st century enemies, aka hackers, is by using a VPN. Going online without a VPN is like sending a postcard with all your personal, financial, and password information exposed for the postman and all the world to see. But a VPN puts an envelope over your sensitive information and protects your identity. ExpressVPN is consistently ranked one of the best and most trusted in the business. It's easy to use, comes with 24-hour support, and I don't notice it slowing down my connection at all. Additionally, ExpressVPN allows you to stream videos that are blocked in your own country. It might not surprise you to learn that I'm a bit of an Anglophile. And since I started using ExpressVPN, I've been able to watch a ton of my favorite British shows like QI and Blackadder right on my Netflix account. Right now, fans of my channel can get 3 months free by clicking on the link in the description, or by going to expressvpn.com/LindsayHoliday. Thank you to ExpressVPN for sponsoring this video. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, comment your thoughts, and check out my other royal history videos. If you really want to help, please consider supporting me on Patreon. A link is in the description. Thank you for watching.